Welcome to the March edition of Community Producers. I'm Doris Wagner. As spring approaches, you might just be thinking about those spring do-it-yourself projects that you've been putting off. Well, the Restore is a perfect place to put those slightly used items you no longer use. Sue Vince is taking us on a ride through the streets of Courtenay on a bicycle. We meet a Mason bee expert who is delightfully enthusiastic about these unsung heroes of nature. We also meet an artist and learn more about the fascinating process that she uses. After that, we step back in time and visit the Willows Hotel before it burned to the ground. And finally, we learn the top 5 things you might not know about the almighty PCP 45. But first, let's catch up with Katie Corman at the Restore.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I work for Habitat for Humanity, Vancouver Island North. Today, I'd like to invite you into the Campbell River Restore. It's located at 1725 Willow Street in Campbell River. The Restore is a new and used building and home supply store. We accept donations from the public of gently used merchandise. We then sell it back at discounted prices. And all proceeds from the Restore help support Habitat for Humanity's building projects. It's our social enterprise.
The items that we're looking for, we pretty much will take furniture, appliances, housewares, pictures. All those things will support the sales that we have that support our local families. Another piece that we take for donation that many of our committee members don't know are kitchen cabinets. If you're looking to do a renovation and you are paying a high price to have those cabinets uninstalled, we will actually come to your home and uninstall them for you. And what we expect in return is that we get to take the cabinets with us and sell them in our Restore. And we are really looking for cabinets, so think of us when you need to take those cabinets down.
We sell everything at about 40 to 70% off retail price, and all of our items are either very gently used or we do get new items donated from retail stores.
We are looking for volunteers. Everything that we do is strongly supported by our local Campbell River volunteers. We couldn't do this process without their assistance. We have 20 to 30 current volunteers, and definitely we are in dire need of more throughout the weekdays to just pop in, even if you want to give us 4 hours of your time once a week. We have so many different things that you can do if you have a niche that you enjoy doing.
It's a win-win situation. So the community benefits because they're able to buy supplies and building supplies and home supplies at discounted prices. Our homeowners win because proceeds from the sales help to support our home ownership program. And we also engage a huge community of volunteers who win because they meet new people and they learn new skills.
Thanks for that, Katie. Lots of great information, not to mention inspiration for those do-it-yourself projects at home. And now, this important message from the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition.
I think if more people were riding their bicycles, they may end up discovering the joy that many of us that do ride find in the activity. Instead of being in a place of fear when you're out on your bicycle, you can be out in a place of happiness. And it's perhaps a form of joy that every citizen has a right to expect. I'm Steve Allen. I'm the membership secretary for the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition.
Steve grew up in a time when riding a bicycle was a way to meet up with friends and explore the city. But like many of us, over time the use of a vehicle became necessary, and so his bike riding period ended. It was many years later that he started cycling again. But riding a bike is a bit trickier these days, And because of that, Steve noticed many people are hesitant to ride a bike.
I became involved with Cycling Coalition due to conversations that I was having with other people riding bicycles. They would think that I was somehow superhuman because I'd be riding in the middle of winter when perhaps it's raining a bit. They say, well, I can't do that. And I would be able to tell them, well, you can buy clothes to deal with those kind of situations. Sometimes people will object, say, I'm not in shape to ride a bicycle. And I could say to them, well, if you ride more, you will be in shape. But when somebody told me, I'm afraid, I really had no answer for them because they had good reason to be afraid. There was many instances where it simply wasn't safe, particularly for a novice cyclist, to be out there riding.
As a board member of the Cycling Coalition, Steve now advocates for ways to make cycling an accessible option so that more people can experience the joy of riding a bike.
If we have a larger member base within the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition, it will send a message to local politicians that there are many voters throughout the Comox Valley who actually care about finding safe places to ride their bicycles and value the education that the coalition provides to school-aged children to ride their bikes safely, and gives parents the confidence to know that they can allow their children to ride to school. If politicians decide that safer infrastructure could be built, people will indeed use it, and perhaps a byproduct of that will be making our communities more livable. We would like to be able to share the pleasure of riding.
Thank you, Sue. Now we'll follow Judy Murakami, who introduces us to a Mason bee expert to learn a little bit more about the secret life of bees.
When civilization encroaches on the natural world, we end up with a lot of different changes, and one of the changes could be the lack of mason bees. Al Martin has been studying mason bees and he loves them. He's passionate about them. Like most people, Al didn't know very much about mason bees. In fact, he had never heard about them until he saw some mud in a hole and thought, what is this?
7 years ago, I noticed a plug outside and the little cover wasn't on, and I went to plug something in and I discovered that the ground hole was full of mud. Didn't think too much about it, but I was talking to the neighbor and I told him, and he says, oh, that's mason bees. In the wild, it will look for holes, and that's the number of holes that it can find is the factor that controls the number of mason bees we have, because there's never enough holes.
Mason bees are critical to our pollinating the fruits and vegetables. So in order to maintain our level of production, we want to make sure that the mason bees have a fighting chance.
They're called mason bees because they mud up these holes. So they've got to have a source of mud. Now, at the house here, I actually put out 7 houses. On a normal year, I would get about 3,000 cocoons. This year happened to be a really bad year. In the spring we had a warm spell. A lot of the wild mason bees emerged, but there was really nothing for them to eat, so a lot of those died. So not just myself, most of the other friends who have mason's bee all had suffered from productivity this year because of that collapse.
If you would like to get more control of your cherries and your fruits and vegetables to make sure that they actually produce fruits and vegetables, mason bees are the answer.
What you can do is, in your fridge, when it's your cherry tree, I'll take out and put in what I need for that. It's a month later when I will put out cocoons for my blueberries.
Oh, so you don't put them all out at once?
No, you just do it for what you want it for.
If you'd like Al to come and do a presentation or learn more about Mason bees, you can always contact him at almorton922@gmail.com. From the Comox Valley, this is Judy Murakami for Shaw TV.
Artist Sharon Lennox brings nature to life just by scratching the surface. Kate Brown brings us this story.
You always go in the direction the feather grows. My name is Sharon Lennox. I'm with the Originals Only, and I do scratchboard. That is my medium of choice. My style is total realism, ultra realism. I like doing birds. That's probably my best work is birds. I love birds. I love the intricate feathers that they have and how it lies on the body, how the beak lies, how the eye looks. The eye is the most important thing on an animal or a bird or a human. And when you get that eye, once you got that eye, everything else just sort of falls into place. I need quite good photos to do my work, and I have a fairly decent camera and lens, and whenever I go anywhere, I got that camera with me. We were in Africa in 2015, and you can see some of the pieces that I've done reflects that. And everything you see is photos that I took myself. And to me, that's really important, to do work from my own photo work. This is a professional level board. And it is exactly what I say. It's a hard board, and on that hard board, there is clay, white clay. And on top of the white clay, there's a layer of black Indian ink. Now, in order to do a scratch board, you get your image and you get it on your board. That's your first step, and you must have a very accurate drawing. Scratch board is quite unforgiving in a lot of ways because once you get into the black, you cannot fix it. If you're into the scratched area, you can fix minor defects, but you can't do it when it gets into the black. So you got to really have an accurate drawing. Well, if I was to outline that, I can never get rid of it. So I don't want to outline it because then it wouldn't look natural. It would have a definite stop. You would outline the odd thing, but not in a feather, ever, ever, ever. I did sketch. I had several sketches that I did when I was quite young, and I don't know what happened to them, and I wish I would have kept them because it would have been interesting to see how it evolved from that time with absolutely no training whatsoever and no study until today, where to me it's my life now. This is what I do. You have to put layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of color. And I tried using a straighter mix and not watering it down, but it just doesn't seem to work the same. And you simply put it on like this. You just brush it on. It dries very quickly. You cannot do any kind of scratching on top of it until it's dry. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. But as an artist, I don't know, I guess I'm a perfectionist. And I think that a lot of people ask me, which is your favorite piece? And I say, my next one. Because I always think there's room for improvement. I mean, I think my work does fairly well, you know, in sales and in shows. But I think there's always room for improvement, and that's what keeps me going, is to make that absolute perfect perfect bird or perfect feather or perfect animal. It doesn't matter what, but it has to me, the perfectionism is what makes, that's what drives me.
Now we're taking a short break for announcements, and when we return, a story that takes us back to a simpler time here in Campbell River.
Request access to air your content on the community producers. Volunteer with us. Join a free TV workshop. Check out these websites.
Step into the living history in the lobby of the Willows Hotel. The Willows Hotel has a distinction of being Campbell River's first business in the downtown core. In 1904, Campbell River was a very remote hamlet and an extremely unlikely spot for starting any kind of business, especially a hotel. But Frederick and Charles Tulin, a couple of enterprising entrepreneurs, saw the potential in the area. They saw that there was a lot of activity in the region. There was sports fishermen coming, there was logging camps, there was lots of potential for mining development. And for them, they thought this was a perfect spot to start a hotel. By 1910, their sites grew even bigger, and they built a second hotel also in the downtown core and called the Willows. The new Willows was an 80-room, 3-story building which dominated the downtown core for much of its life. It was very elegantly laid out, had all the amenities. Visitors extolled how it had running hot water and lighting, even though so far from the main centers. Unfortunately, the Willows burned in 1963, but for the duration of its life, it was the social center of Campbell River. Around it sprung up a number of other businesses and services which now form Campbell River's downtown core. Its legacy is still very much a part of the community. A lot of residents remember going there, having their birthday parties and all the other activities that happened in that space. And descendants of Charles and Frederick are still very much a part of the business and social community. So the Willows Hotel is a true example of living history.
Thank you, Sandra Parrish, for that story. Be sure to check out the other exhibits at our wonderful museum in Campbell River. Coming up next is Brian Kyle, a dedicated volunteer here at the Maritime Heritage Center, who shares his top 5 things you may not know about this beloved vessel, the BCP 45.
Here we are at the Maritime Heritage Center, downtown Campbell River, and behind me is the beloved BCP 45. Here are perhaps 5 things you may not know about the BCP 45 and our center. Number 1. The vessel behind me, the BCP 45, was photographed out on the fishing grounds, and that photograph found its way to the Canadian Mint, where it was reproduced for several years and made this vessel the most reproduced vessel ever apparently in the world. Number 2, The BCP 45 was a salmon seiner, and with a primary catch of the sockeye salmon was the money catch. This is the net that was used, and it was towed out by the skiff into a big circle around the fish that were heading for the river of their birth. And so this would be the net. The net, this is a table seiner. The boat has been restored back to as a table seiner, and the net is stored on this table and is towed off the back of the boat, or the table can be turned to the starboard or port side of the boat. The net is then closed at the bottom, and that imprisons the fish, to which they are then brailed aboard the boat into the hold. Number 3, welcome to the galley of the BCP 45. This is the dining and recreation center on the boat. Part of the recreation is a good game of crib and a nice hot cup of coffee between fishing, of course. Number 4, we're down in the engine room. This is the powerhouse that drove the boat on its fishing expeditions all the way from the Alaska to the Washington coast and around both sides of Vancouver Island. She fished for 80 years, and mostly for salmon, but several other species. This engine was acquired, and it happens to be exactly the same as the engines that were in the vessel. Behind me, you can see the bunks where the crew would sleep. There's 4 crew up here and 2 upstairs. Number 5, this is the wheelhouse where Captain Ole Chikite piloted his vessel up and down the BC coast in pursuit of the almighty salmon. There's so many stories to tell about the boat and around our center that we would invite you to come down and spend a few hours with us and get the stories. There's so many stories here on the boat.
Thank you, Brian, for sharing your love of the BCP 45 with us. He's just one of the many dedicated volunteers here at the Maritime Heritage Center. One of the many gifts of community TV is the platform it gives for members to have a voice. If you think community TV is for you, please contact us. We're always looking for storytellers.
Request access to air your content on the community producers. Volunteer with us. Join a free TV workshop. Check out these websites.
Our final story is a Goodnight story, read by Leisha Davis, or Bubba, as the little ones call her.
Baba reads. In my family, Baba was grandmother, so Baba reads is for grandchildren and children everywhere, and especially Mara, Abby, and Noah. Today will be Goodnight Moon with Margaret Wise Brown. In the great green room, there was a telephone and a red balloon. See the red balloon and the telephone? And a picture of the cow jumping over the moon. And there were 3 little bears sitting in chairs, and 2 little kittens. There are the 2 little kittens, and a pair of mittens, and a little toy house, and a young mouse. Can you see the young mouse? There it is. And a comb, and a brush, and a bowl full of mush, and a quiet old lady whispering, hush. Good night, room. Good night, moon. Good night, cow jumping over the moon. Good night, light. Good night, red balloon. Good night, bears, and good night, chairs. There they are. Good night, kittens, and good night, mittens. Good night, clocks, and good night, socks. Where are the socks? There are the socks. And the clocks are there. There's 2 of them. There's the next one. Good night, little house. And good night, mouse. Good night, comb. And goodnight, brush. Goodnight, nobody. Goodnight, mush. And goodnight to the little old lady whispering, hush. Goodnight, stars. Goodnight, air. Goodnight, noises everywhere. And that's the end.
Thank you, Leisha Davis, for sharing your love of reading. Well, our show has come to an end. I hope you have enjoyed hearing from our community members. For the community producers, I'm Doris Wagner, and thanks for watching.